I'm Joe Gigliotti, PhD, and I am your guide for this journey you are about to embark on. Now, to survive here in this generation, you're going to have to know a few things. Come along for the ride. I will show you how to live. Another edition of How to Live. I'm your host, your guide, teacher, professor, and PhD, Joe Gigliotti, and thank you for tuning in to this latest episode of How to Live. Today's episode is all about how to mature, and our first lesson of the day, we are all a certain age, a number, whether you're 4, whether you're 10, whether you're 50 or 70. It's always important, as part of maturing, to act your age. Act your age.
Yes, Jim, what is it?
Well, Mr. Evans, Miss Black wanted me to bring this to you.
Oh? Won't you sit down, Jim? I understand you have an unusual pencil, Jim.
Yes, sir. That is, it's nothing special.
But you're rather proud of it.
It has my name on it. I won it in an essay contest.
May I see it? Personally, I think that something like this is better for carving.
I'll fix the desk, Mr. Edmonds. I'll sand it down and refinish it. You won't be able to tell where I scratched it at all.
That's a good idea, Jim.
I'll begin today after school.
That would be fine.
Well, what else do you want me to do, Mr. Edmonds?
Perhaps you can help me with a problem. I'd like your advice, Jim.
My advice?
Yes, I've got quite a serious problem. There are a great many young people in the school, Jim. Each is an individual, but in one important way, they're all alike. They're all growing up.
Is that the problem, Mr. Edmonds?
Yes, growing up is a problem. Because, well, I remember one time I watched some of the boys play ball. You've probably seen it too. The boys were all about your age. In years, they're young men. But sometimes in their behavior...
They act like children?
That's it. A boy batting struck out, and what a fuss he made. He was a young man in years, but the way he behaved was more in keeping with a 5-year-old. When you see a child do the same thing, you think, oh, well, he'll grow up sometime. But at 15 or 16, this boy was still reacting the same way. He was still showing violent temper when little things went wrong for him. So the question is, why doesn't he grow up? Why does he still behave as a child? How can we help him get rid of these leftovers from childish behavior? That sort of behavior we call an infantile reaction.
Infant? Well, whatever it is, it spoils the game for others. Why can't he act his age? I guess scratching a desk spoils it for others, too. Why can't I act my age, eh?
That's what I'd like to know, Jim. Well, you know what to do about the desk. But now this pencil. If you were a first grader, I'd just keep it, wouldn't I?
Oh, but Mr. Edmonds, I'm not a first grader.
Oh, you're not. So suppose you start fixing that desk. Come back for your pencil when you feel you're ready for it.
Yes, sir.
Goodbye, Jim.
Why can't I act my age? That's a good one. Oh, well. Fix up the desk and forget about the whole thing. Pencil gone? Oh, yes. Maybe one of these pencils will do it. Hey, act your age. No use getting sore. That won't open the can. Hello? Oh, Mr. Olson.
Need some help, son?
Why, yes. Do you have a knife or something to open this?
Yes, I guess so. I'm using yours to carve up a desk, I see.
No, a pencil.
A pencil? Bright crop of young fellows in this school. Every day think up a new way to act like babies. Never grow up. Still little boys playing with marbles. Pencils, knives, pulling girls' hair. Well, there's no sense in cleaning up here until you're through. I'll come back later.
Still little boys. Playing with marbles, eh? Huh. But maybe it's true. Remember what Bill did yesterday. He was sitting right there. I guess he thought no one was looking when he took Jean's notebook. Was he cheating? Probably. And that's a childish thing to do. That's a child's way out. Then there was Phyllis the other day. She seemed to be worrying about something, and when Miss Black called on her, and she wasn't ready with an answer, why, you'd have thought it was something terrible that had happened. She almost cried. Just like a little girl. Yeah, that's it. An infantile reaction. Why don't we act our age? I'm going to talk to Mr. Edmonds again. After school tomorrow. I've given it a lot of thought, and, well, I'm not the only one, Mr. Edmonds. Everyone seems to act childish sometimes, but I don't understand just why.
Well, it's partly because of the way we grow up. Your body's growing up now, Jim. You're growing much taller these years, but it may be some years more before your shoulders really broaden out and you become fully grown. Growing up emotionally is much the same. Different parts of our personalities grow at different rates. Some of us never grow up entirely.
So one side of a fellow's personality could be grown up and another still infantile. Is that right?
Yes. For example, you've seen the girl who always has to win an argument. Most of the time, she behaves like a young lady, but let someone disagree with her, well, she might just as well be 5 years old. We see reactions like this with young children. Then there's the fellow who can't take a joke. He laughs as hard as anyone at most jokes, but when the joke's on him, watch out. His 5-year-old brother would react the same way. There's the boy who constantly shows off to gain attention. There's the girl who cries over trifles. Then remember, there's the ball player who becomes violently angry when he loses out. Those are some of the many infantile reactions we see around us every day. They indicate that a part of one's personality isn't growing up with the rest. Now, what we need is some method of measuring our growth, comparing various parts of our personalities.
Say, I have an idea, Mr. Edmonds. I think I can figure out my age. Anyway, I'd like to try.
Just a minute. Don't you want your pencil?
No, sir. I'll wait until I know how old I am. Let's see. How old am I? When someone disagrees with me? When someone pokes fun at me? When I want attention? When I am confused? When I don't get what I want? There. I guess those are pretty important times to watch out for infantile reactions. Now to rate my age today, and then see how well I can grow. Oh, hello, Mr. Olson.
You again? Carved up another desk already?
No, I'm just trying to figure out how old I am.
Ask your mother.
No, I mean how old I am and the way I behave.
Oh, don't rate yourself too high. I won't bother you, will I?
No, this is too important. I thought of it 2 days ago, so I made several copies of this and had my parents rate my age in each of these points, and my best friend. My rating wasn't exactly high in some places.
But it looks like a good rating system. What do you do now?
Well, I'll have to work hard to bring my rating up. Here, for instance, where it says, how old am I when I don't get what I want? I rated myself 10 years old, and my dad put it even lower than that. So I'm going to get in the habit of controlling my temper, and maybe next month I'll have a better rating. And by next year, I want to catch up with my real age.
That's something to look forward to.
I'll see. Well, I'm not going to tell you all my ratings, but I thought you might want a copy of this.
I certainly would. I think everyone here should rate himself and have his friends rate him this way, to make sure he grows up evenly.
And gets rid of those infantile reactions. I think I'd like my pencil back now.
It's there on the desk.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Mr. Edmonds. Goodbye.
How old are you? Wouldn't you like to try rating yourself on a sheet like this?
Okay, welcome back. Now that you've learned all about how to act your age, it's time for our second lesson in how to mature. Folks, the years don't stop. The years will pass and you will grow and grow and grow. and you have to keep up with those years. So it's very important to know how to grow up. Grow up.
The last big dance of the year is over. Tonight is the most wonderful spring night you ever knew, Sally. The air is so soft, and Hank is such a nice guy.
Let's go to Mountain Park for a while and look at the moon. We can turn off at Hatfield.
Let's decide when we get to Hatfield. All right?
Okay.
You could have impulsively answered yes or no. Why didn't you, Sally? Was it because you have learned to recognize when your own emotions want to take over? It wasn't too long ago when you started to think about your emotions objectively. There was that day in class. Hank was there, too.
May I have your attention, please? You are wondering what today's lesson will be about. Today's lesson in psychology is going to be about emotions. Now, we all start with a primary set, and as we grow older, we acquire more of them. We've all read about Bluebeard's closet and Pandora's box. Most of us know the fascination of locked places and hidden things. That fascination is probably the emotional side of our curiosity. Would you like to know what's in the box? All right. Why don't you come up around the table?
Where did you go? Went to the train station.
Oh, jeez.
You've just experienced emotion. Unreasoning, illogical emotion. Think now. Do you think that I'd turn loose a poisonous snake in the classroom? Only association would cause you to feel the emotion of fear at the sight of a harmless snake. Emotion can so work on us that under its stimulus, we may sometimes perform feats of almost superhuman strength. Now, would you like to come up around the table and see what's in the second box? Most of you now plainly show the results of emotional conditioning. A box held a snake. You don't like snakes. So now you associate a box with a snake or with some possible danger. Many experiences condition us emotionally. A bitten child may fear a dog, or a howling dog may make us feel lonely. A train whistle at night, the ticking of an old clock, a word may bring an emotional response.
Those puppies reminded you of your own Cappy. Cappy rarely changes his feelings toward you. He's friendly and loyal, and you feel the same way toward him. You wouldn't tolerate anyone hurting a single hair of his shaggy coat. Yet how quickly your emotions changed while walking with Cappy that afternoon. You saw the familiar convertible rolling by. Hank was smiling. There was an attractive girl beside him. A stranger. She sat so close to him, she was practically in his lap. How could he, the deceitful... You yanked poor Cappy along behind you. The Cappy you love. You were hurt, furious, and indignant all at once. You were jealous. You felt completely alone, deserted. Any other time, you would have been the first at the phone, just in case it was Hank. But now jealousy had swept away your common sense. Fortunately, your mother has a sense of humor. And you hoped Hank never found out what a fool your emotions had made of you. You came to realize what your parents mean to you. How pleasant the feeling of emotional security is. The mutual love and respect you all share and take for granted. Loving others and being loved is a good feeling, a feeling everyone wants to share. Then there was the night your schoolmates shared a different, ugly emotion. Hate. Everybody was whooping it up at the rally. The excitement about the coming game built up to a frenzy of enthusiasm. Then someone started a whispered rumor that twisted excitement into something else. What made them pick that particular teacher's house? What reason did anyone have to start such a thing? As a stone smashed the window, you saw how hysteria turns individuals into a mob. You were amazed to see sudden impulses rob normally decent people of their values. That night, you and Hank kept your emotional balance and remained rational. So you learned that it isn't always easy to think things out in the heat of the moment. And you'll never forget that day in the fencing class, Sally, when you found out how uncontrollable and intense emotion can be. Your opponent's dogged parrying seemed perfect, tireless. Again and again, she moved just a little faster than you. Your intense frustration boiled up inside you and then suddenly erupted into white anger. You wanted to injure her, and then caught control of yourself. It left you sick to your stomach, and even now you wince when you think of it. No, you never want to feel that way again, Sally. It wasn't easy learning to stop and think things out when strong emotion possesses you. But that's the real test of whether you are learning to handle your emotions.
Let's just go on home, shall we, Hank?
You're the boss.
You sure you won't mind?
Of course I mind.
You've learned through experience that no matter how deep the emotion is, you don't have to let it take you over. You have come to realize that by bringing calm reasoning to emotional questions, Your decisions will be what you really want them to be. You're starting to think about your emotions, Sally, and you are on the way toward emotional maturity.
Welcome back. Now that you've learned all about how to grow up, it is important to note that when you mature, sometimes it can be scary. You know, changes will happen, you'll get older, new responsibilities, all sorts of things. But it's important to not have that fear. So this next lesson, to avoid that fear, is don't be afraid. Don't be afraid.
Time for you to be asleep, Billy.
I'm not a bit sleepy.
You have to get up early tomorrow, remember?
Oh, I don't want to go to bed yet.
It's bedtime and sleep time. Now, put these things down. Now get under the covers and out with the lights.
Mom, I'm always awake for ages after the lights are out.
Oh, don't worry. You'll fall asleep right away. You'll be asleep before you know it. Good night, Billy.
Good night.
Billy's mother didn't know the real reason why he didn't want to go to bed. When he was left alone in the dark bedroom, Billy became frightened. He didn't understand about fear, that fear is a natural thing and nothing to be ashamed of, and that there's a way to go about getting over some fears. So he had never told his mother about it.
What is it, Billy? Why aren't you in bed? What's wrong, Billy? Is something the matter?
Mother.
Yes?
Is it all right if I leave the lights on just for tonight?
Oh, is that what's been bothering you?
I thought I saw someone in the room, and I heard noises.
Well, noises always seem louder at night, and then we often imagine all sorts of things that aren't true. Tell me, Billy, are you often afraid like this?
Lots of nights.
Well, I'm sorry you didn't tell me about this before. You should never be ashamed of telling me when you're afraid of something. Fear is nothing to be ashamed of. Everybody's afraid of something or other. It's very natural. Do you remember what happened a few weeks ago, that Sunday morning? I was making breakfast. You and Dad were waiting so you could get outside to work on the lawn. Do you remember how the bacon fat poured over the stove and caught fire? I was terribly frightened. Your father was frightened, too. Then he remembered an old trick about putting out grease fires, and he quickly smothered the flames. We were all frightened of the fire. It was natural. Being afraid was nature's way of warning us that the fire was dangerous and might harm us. That's what fear is, a warning of danger. Sometimes we're afraid of big things, and sometimes we're afraid of very little ones. But you shouldn't be ashamed of being afraid of something dangerous. No matter whether it's big or little, being afraid is nature's way of reminding us that we should do something to avoid the danger, and to avoid being harmed. Do you remember the time you threw the ball onto the ledge at school? Danny was angry at you for throwing the ball out of bounds and insisted that you get it down. He dared you to climb up the wall on the drain pipe, but it looked too dangerous to you, and you were afraid of losing your grip and falling. So you refused to climb up, even if it was a dare. And the janitor got the ball for you. You see, being afraid of climbing up the wall was your warning that it was very dangerous and that you might be hurt. You showed good common sense when you paid attention to that warning, and you don't have to be ashamed of it. Being afraid was nature's way of getting you to avoid something dangerous. But now there's something else about fear that I don't think you quite understand, Billy.
What's that?
Well, sometimes when you become afraid, there isn't anything that's really dangerous. Sometimes you think things are dangerous when they're not. Sometimes you and most other people grow afraid even when they know there's nothing dangerous. Can you think of anything like that, Billy?
I know. Kathy Lewis used to be afraid of dogs, even when they were friendly. She was so scared she'd cross the street when she saw one.
Well, that's a good example of exactly what I mean.
I found it out one day when I was playing with Scrappy. You know Mr. Rogers' dog? He's friendly. He wouldn't even hurt a flea. I didn't know she was so fraidy cat. I called her to come over, but she wouldn't do it. She wouldn't come back even when I told her the dog wouldn't hurt her. She didn't have to be afraid of the dog. It wouldn't have hurt her. Isn't that what you mean, Mom?
That's just what I mean. And you remember how afraid Keith Hogan was about learning to swim?
That's right. He was scared to go near the water.
Yes. Keith was afraid of something that wouldn't hurt him, too. And there's another kind of being afraid when there's no real danger. That's being afraid of what people might think, especially your parents. Do you remember a few months ago when Mrs. Campbell phoned me after dinner? Frank hadn't been seen since school. They were waiting dinner for him, and poor Mrs. Campbell didn't know what to think. Well, you know what happened. They found Frank down in the basement. His report card had some bad grades on it, and he was afraid of what his mother and father would think, maybe even that they'd stop loving him. Of course, he found out that he shouldn't have been afraid, that his parents would go on loving him no matter what grades he made. So you can see what I mean when I say there was no real danger there. There are many things that people are afraid of when there's really no danger. Things like fear of being laughed at because their clothes are different or because their marks aren't as good as they might be. They're afraid for all sorts of foolish reasons.
But suppose you are afraid of something, like dogs or the dark. What can you do about it?
Well, each time you're afraid, try to understand whether there's really something to be afraid of. If you're afraid when there's real danger, you can learn ways of protecting yourself. Fear at the right time will make you careful. Fear and wise action, such as Dad took, or such as you took when you wouldn't climb up that wall, you can be proud, not ashamed of.
But how can you tell when there's a real danger or not?
Just stop and think. Common sense will often help. Then, too, try to remember or find out whether other people are afraid of the same things you are. For instance, Kathy could see that you were playing with the dog and that the dog didn't hurt you. She could know from that there was nothing to be afraid of.
That's right.
So what Kathy needed to do was to try to understand why she was afraid of dogs. Maybe just getting to know some dogs would have helped her get over her fears.
That's what she did do, Mom. Her dad bought her a little puppy to play with. It was the cutest little thing. We all loved it, especially Kathy. That was last summer. Her dog's big now. Kathy took good care of him. He got to know dogs so well that she isn't a bit afraid of them anymore. I guess that's what you mean by getting to know and understand the thing you're afraid of.
Yes. Keith got over his fear of the water by taking swimming lessons with a teacher he trusted and believed in.
Yeah, he can swim pretty well now.
There's another thing you can do to help yourself get over a fear when there's no real danger, and that's to talk about your fear with somebody.
Like we're doing now.
That's right. You could talk it over with your parents, friends, your teacher, your doctor, someone you're fond of and trust. If Frank had only talked with his mother and father about his fear that they might stop loving him if his report card wasn't good, it would have been better for them all. Of course, his parents didn't realize he felt that way. Perhaps they expected too much of Frank. And it may sound funny, but Frank's grades were bad partly because of his fear of his parents. He was afraid he couldn't make good. Talking it over certainly made a big difference to the Campbells. It helped all of them understand each other better. As they talked over his work and work habits and what they expected of him, Frank got over his fear of making poor grades and of not doing well enough to please his father and mother. He's doing much better in school now, isn't he?
Yeah. Gee, Mom, it does help a lot to talk things over.
Billy, would you like to talk about some of the things that you're afraid of? Like why you don't like the room dark?
Well, I'm lonesome. And I'm afraid you and Dad aren't downstairs. That maybe you've gone away.
You have my word that we'll never go away without telling you. And of course we'd never leave you alone. Either we or someone else will always be where you can call. How about it? Ready for sleep now?
Yeah, I guess so.
All right, darling. Good night. What about the light, Billy?
Tell you what, Mom. Leave the door open a little instead, will you?
That's fair enough. Good night, son.
He will feel as alone as he did before? Do you think he'll stay awake as long as he used to? Does knowing that others are afraid of real dangers make it easier for Billy to stop worrying about his own fears? And when he remembers that some people are afraid when there's no real danger, does that make it easier for Billy to understand some of his own fears? Billy refused to climb the drain pipe because it looked dangerous. Yet at the same time, he had another fear. He was afraid he might be called a coward by his friends. He had to decide which was the real fear. Do you think he decided correctly? And do you think that the story of Frank's being afraid of what his parents might think helped Billy understand his own fears better? Did it help Billy to talk over his fears with his mother? What do you think?
Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that last segment, and I hope you learned a lot. Now that you've learned how to not be afraid, it's time to wrap up our lessons with a very important last lesson. You'll have to mature, you'll have to grow, you'll have to age. It's just a part of life. And part of that is just accepting it. Or in other words, to define our next lesson, we want you to learn all about how to embrace reality. Embrace reality.
Look, Joe, why don't we talk about it tonight? I'll pick you up early. Around 7:30, we'll go to an early show. And... Come on, Joe, don't look so serious.
That's what I wanted to talk to you about, Dave. I can't go out with you tonight.
What gives anyway? You got a family party on or something?
No, it's nothing to do with the family. I don't know how to say this, Dave, but... I'm dating Jimmy Dawson.
Give me that again?
I'm dating Jimmy Dawson.
That show off? Who thinks he's such a big football hero? What's the idea? You falling for his phony shoulders or something?
He asked me to go out with him, that's all, and I said I would.
What about the little matter of going steady with me?
I decided it's time we broke up. It's stupid for kids our age to keep going out with the same person year after year.
I guess your mother thought up that line.
She did not. I can make up my own mind. Look, I told Jimmy that I'd meet him after school this afternoon. He's waiting for me right down over by the corner, so I better go now.
I guess a guy has to have a car to impress a girl like you. Along with some phony shoulders. Well, your boyfriend better watch out. Because he might meet a guy with a Cadillac someday. And then where'll he be?
Western, we still have a mathematical chance of getting in the playoffs.
How come?
Well, you see, we're one game up on them now.
What are you going to
do? Our games with Lincoln High. Western still has a game with them.
And they haven't beaten Lincoln all year.
That's right. That's what I say.
Isn't that how?
Yeah. Pretty good guy, don't he?
Hi, fellas.
Hello, Dave. How's it going?
Man, lousy English exam, old man Peterson sprung on us today, huh?
Yeah, lousy is right. I never even knew there was such a thing as George in poets. How was I supposed to name him?
I put down George. I figured there ought to be at least one Georgian poet named George.
Boy, Peterson will catch you for that. He's still mad about the time you brought him the bunch of daffodils after we studied that poem about daffodils by Wordsworth.
Yeah, Peterson's crazy about me.
Hey, is that the new sophomore?
Yeah. You never guessed she was only 14?
Telling me. Wow.
Say, Dave, what happened to your steady? There she is with Jim Dawson.
You had a fight? Dawson has a car, and boy, does it ever impress that doll.
Yeah, it's those flashy white wall tires that send her.
She wants to get into the big time, Davy boy. Captain of the football team and all that.
Well, I was getting kind of sick of her anyway. That Dawson, what a show-off. You know, he really thinks he's somebody? Well, as far as I'm concerned, they deserve each other.
Hey, Dave, how come you didn't turn out to football practice all week?
Because I quit the crummy team, that's why. Coach, he doesn't know what he's doing, and the team's going downhill so fast it isn't even funny. I'm going over to see what gives with the new doll.
Did you hear about Dave? Coach left him on the bench during the whole of last Saturday's game. Boy, was Dave mad. He quit the team right the next day.
He hasn't anything to be sore about. He thinks the team can't get along without him. He's kidding himself. Let's face it, he's just not that good.
Well, they beat us 3 out of 4, but we're a lot better than we were then. They hit their peak just about that time, and I don't think they've gotten any better.
Hi, Joe. Hi, Joey.
Oh, hi. Boy, I'm really outnumbered now. I gotta go, Jill. I'll see you tonight. About 8?
Sure, it'll be fine, Jim.
So long.
I thought you went steady with Dave Forsythe.
We broke up. Gee, I always thought Dave was cute. He's okay. He acts like a kid, though. But he's so funny in class. You should go out with him, then you wouldn't think all those wild tricks were so funny.
I always thought Dave acted like a kid, too. You can only take so much of that fooling around.
Honest, he's like a big baby the way he shows off. You should have seen him last Monday in the hall at school.
Hey, Dawson, I'd like to speak to you for a minute.
Sure, Dave.
I guess you think you're pretty smart playing up to the coach last Saturday and getting him to leave me out of the game.
Oh, now, wait a minute. You got your wires crossed, boy.
Who are you trying to kid? I saw you talking to the coach just before the game, and I could see you looking straight at me. Pretty dirty trick fixing it so I couldn't play.
Dave, for Pete's sake.
We were talking about the new play, Dave.
We didn't mention you once.
Oh, come off it, Forsythe. You know, it's possible the coach doesn't think you're good enough.
I know a dirty deal when I see one.
You're nuts.
It was awful. I was so embarrassed I nearly died. This wasn't the first time that Dave acted like that either. I was really fed up. And then, well, Jimmy asked me to go out with him a couple of days later, and I thought it'd be terrific. He's so nice. Well, he acts his age. Are you going to go steady with Jimmy now? Oh, I don't know. This is the first time I've gone out with him.
I don't blame you for telling Dave off. He's an awful mama's boy. Gee, I gotta be going.
Yeah, me too.
Can't you say excuse me to your mother for being late?
I'm sorry, Mom. Excuse me.
Your mother can't keep dinner waiting just because you feel like hanging around the streets a little longer.
I said I was sorry, didn't I?
It's just another indication of your constant thoughtlessness and irresponsibility.
Say, Dad, do you think I could have the car tonight? I'll take real good care of it, and I'll fill it up with gas when I bring it back.
What do you want with the car?
Gee, Dad, girls won't go out with a fella unless he's got a car.
Take Jill Anderson out long enough without a car.
Well, she left me for a guy with a car.
Who's that, dear?
Oh, that crummy show-off, Jim Dawson.
He's a good boy, young Dawson. And I understand from his father that he saved his money and bought that car himself.
Dad, are you going to let me have the car or not?
No, I am not. You're too young to be running around in cars at night with girls.
I'm 16, aren't I? I've got a license. What's the sense of having a license if you can't drive the car?
Why don't you let him use it this once, Fred? It's true. Boys nowadays need cars to take girls out. All the mothers say so. Why, this afternoon at Lucy Fillmore's, they were saying that...
Look, Lila, you know I need that car in my work. Now, if he got in an accident, what would I do? Anyway, what does he do with all the money he makes at the grocery store? Let him save his money and buy a car, just like young Dawson.
All I ever hear around here is money. I'm getting sick and tired of it. I never get to do anything the other kids do. And the excuse you always give me is money.
All right, that's about enough, young man. I didn't come home from a hard day's work just to get impertinence from you.
You always treat me as though I were about 6 years old.
That's because you act like you were 6 years old.
Fred.
Lila, something has got to be done about that boy. He's unstable, he's irresponsible, can't save money, he's girl crazy. Why, when they wouldn't let him play in Saturday's game, he quit the squad.
Fred, sit down. Stop being so excited. He's young. Things like having a car mean a lot to him. Oh, maybe I've babied him, but... You know, Fred, you haven't always set the best example for him. Being your son, he wants to be like you. He wants to copy you. And you have to admit you blow your top awfully easily sometimes. Like tonight. You bawled him out without even asking him why he was late. And lately, you've nagged him from morning till night. Can't you say something nice to him once in a while?
I can't seem to get near the boy.
You expect too much of him. I wish you'd arrange something nice for the two of you. Something you could do together. Couldn't you get together for a Saturday?
Lila, I don't mean to be hard on the boy. Really. Look, I'll try to think up something that we can do together. And in the meantime, how about you going up and talking to him about being more responsible? Frankly, his attitude worries me.
Dave, dear, don't be so upset. You must try to understand how your father feels about the car. You know, perhaps if you saved up some of the money yourself, he'd help you buy one.
He won't help me with anything. Doesn't trust me. I wouldn't hurt his crummy old car. Always acts as though I was a dumb kid.
Well, Dave, you should show him you're responsible. Lately, you've been awfully rebellious. You know how angry it makes him.
Never notices anything good I do. Just yells all the time.
I wish you wouldn't be like this. Well, I'll leave your dessert in the refrigerator for you. Well, I certainly didn't get very far. He can be terribly stubborn. You know, Fred, he said you never notice when he tries to please you. Sometimes I wonder if we don't set up standards that are just a little too high for him. And then when he can't come up to them, he gets angry and snaps at everyone. I think he's really anxious to please you.
I think I'll go up and have a talk with him. See if I can't work something out.
Dave, may I come in? Dave, I'm sorry about our argument, but I wish you'd try to see my point of view about this car business. Look, since you won't be with the team Saturday, how'd you like to see the game with me?
No, thank you.
What do you mean, no, thank you? Look, I've heard about all I can take from a young brat like you. Despite your bad behavior, I came up here and tried to be friends. I even apologized. You didn't even try to respond like a human being. Something's gonna be done about you.
Dad, this is Jimmy.
Jimmy, how are you? Nice to see you.
Hello, Mr. Anderson.
It's quite a car you've got there.
Yeah, it's a real bomb, sir.
Well, I hope when you drive it as a car and not as a bomb.
Oh, Jimmy's a good driver, Dad.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's good.
Why don't we go ahead and sit over there for a while?
Okay. give me a fight.
Give me a fight, too.
Did I hurt you?
It serves you right for asking me.
Where you going? You going to go for a ride?
No.
Oh, come on. Do we go?
Okay.
Okay. Let's go.
10 minutes. Dave.
Oh, yes, Mr. Anderson. What's that?
How did Dave get into a situation like this? It seems impossible. But Dave was emotionally unstable. He didn't think straight about what he was doing. Why can't Dave face facts and accept life as it is? Why does he have such an exaggerated idea of his own importance and ability that he can't see things as they are? Because he can't fit the real world into his unreal idea of how it should be, he is so frustrated that he loses control of himself. With help, Dave can learn to control these emotions and develop more mature attitudes. But how could his emotional instability have been prevented?
Okay, that should do it for our last lesson. It's all about how to mature. You should have all the tools that you'll ever need to go through life and mature as you should, and grow and age, and just be a greater person because of it. I thank you for tuning in to this latest edition of How to Live. I'm your host, Professor and PhD, Joe Gigliotti. We'll see you next time on the next episode of How to Live. Keep it simple. We'll see you next time.